Do you think people, if someone were to fail 20 years ago as compared to now, are they treated differently, or is there more empathy involved related to human resource?
That's a very interesting question. So I think, how you perceive failure is within you and it is not with somebody else. Okay, I was one among those, who failed in school, and when I think about failing in school, it's not about failing in subject, it's about losing a year. And this happened in school, right? So when we think about this, I think this is something which taught me to focus on what you are good at. And when I thought about things, what I'm good at, I realized, that I'm good with people. And I'm good with, talking to people. I'm a very good listener.
Maybe you can give us a little bit about your background and, how you came to work with LinkedIn as a customer success manager.
The story goes since my childhood. I think, where I am here today is because of the failures I have had. So, I have a twin brother. Okay, his name is Vaibhav. And, we were the naughty twins. And, we had a lot of failures during our school. And I think, something what our generation taught us, that it's okay to fail, right? And when I think about this, I was one among those, who failed in school. And when I think about failing in school, it's not about failing in subject, it's about losing a year. And this happened in school, right? So when we think about this, I think this is something which taught me to focus on what you are good at. And when I thought about things, what I'm good at, I realized, that I'm good with people. And I'm good with, talking to people. I'm a very good listener. And when I thought about this, I think, this is how I diverted myself to human resources, because I thought this would be one place, where you deal with people directly, right? And that's how I landed into HR. So I started my career into human resources, into a local real estate firm here in Bangalore. And then I got into IBM. I learned, that was for the first time when I dealt with people and clients international. And after that, I joined a firm called State Street. I spent 10 years doing global talent acquisition. And then finally, I got into LinkedIn. Now I'm into customer success. So one thing, when I got into LinkedIn, I learned about LinkedIn was getting into LinkedIn is harder than getting into Harvard University, right? And I felt so proud that, okay, this, if somebody like me can do it, I think anybody can do it.
In corporate mentorship program, usually it's like someone from a very experienced professional dealing with someone who's a fresher, has no experience with the industry. So how do you cause that synergy, and how do you connect and, help students like that?
That's a good question. So see, I have spent close to 1 year with a bunch of students here in this corporate mentorship who have chosen human resources as their majors, right? And one thing in this 1 year where we have transformed together is trying to identify what do we really want, okay? Is it about, you're trying to run away from something and you thought HR is an easy choice and you get into it? Or, is it HR something what you really want to do, right? Why do you want to get into HR? When I ask them questions like, when you want to get into HR, what is the dream job? Or, what is that, how do you see yourself? How do you envision yourself doing a job? Is it about talking to people, or, is it about sitting behind the desk and, moving the needle? Or is it about, you go out there, and you represent your organization? So what is that about HR, right? So asking these kind of questions, and more than that, giving and setting the right expectations. For the first time when I was having conversation with the students, their understanding about human resource was completely different. And I think, the way we, synergized ourselves with each other was to give them real-time scenario, like, what really happens, how people perceive you. And this is at a very right time you're asking this question. Today I was having a session with a group of students, and they just finished their internship. And my question was, so tell me, what did you like about internship? What did you not like about internship? And what is it you want to change in that? Or, given there is another chance, what is that you want to do something different? When we try to decipher this particular information, I think they came up with a lot of things which they had knowledge about, but they never knew that they were thinking it right? So I think this is the way what we're trying to do, that, give them a real-time scenario, what really happens, plus, breaking those barriers, plus also giving them that, what you think is not really true. HR might look something else from the outside, and there are a lot of notions about human resource being not a department which doesn't really work. I mean, that's not true. Come into human resource, and I think these are the busiest people I have seen. Yeah.
So you're talking about failing and failure. So do you think people, if someone were to fail 20 years ago, as compared to now, are they treated differently, or is there more empathy involved related to human resource?
I mean, see, that's a very interesting question. So, I think how you perceive failure is within you, and it is not with somebody else. Okay. For example, when I failed, how do you see that failure as? This is something you'd really never want to do it. That's one way of looking at it. Perhaps you would have identified, okay, this is not my forte, or maybe this is a time where you want to reevaluate. Okay, well, I have failed. Is there something I can do about it? Or maybe you want to take this as a challenge and perhaps revolutionize the whole thing. So how do you perceive failure is not to do with external factors, it is something to do with your internal factors, right? How do you perceive failure is something which has completely to do with you. There will be a lot of situations where external factors like people seeing you differently after you fail, and it starts very much from our family. It starts very much from our friends and from the closest ones, right? The moment you fail, you are perceived differently. So I have failed so many times in my life that I eventually started to take that these are not failures, but this is something I know what to do and what not to do.
Right.
So how you perceive as failure is something what derives you, and that's how it takes you forward, I guess.
So do you think there was more pressure on students then as compared to now, or is it reverse, vice versa?
Well, I don't think so. I'm not thinking it as a pressure. I think it is these sessions are more to do with seeking clarity. These sessions are more to do with what is the best. For example, let me give you one quick example. I was talking to a bunch of students today, and I asked them, so what did you not like about this internship? Well, nobody was talking to me. They were not very, very responsive. And I said, okay, so where was this internship? It was in Hyderabad. Okay, very good. Where were you? I was in Hyderabad. So did you talk to them? No, nobody was answering my phone. I said, did you ask them, can I come and meet you in the office? You are just like 3 blocks away from the office. Why didn't you do that? Oh, yes, I could have done that. So a lot of realization. So I think in these sessions, what we are trying to do is, to give them those realizations to, identify the opportunities. Like nobody will come with a platter, and say, okay, these are your opportunities, this is what you want to do, right? This is how you identify a trend, or you become a trendsetter.
What advice would you give to professionals or students branding themselves in LinkedIn, and what are the common mistakes people can avoid?
You use LinkedIn like you use Instagram.
No.
I think that's what I feel, but again the purpose is very, very different. I mean, see, I work the students what I am mentoring right now. I have seen their social media accounts on Instagram, and I have seen their social media accounts on LinkedIn, right? Their approach on both these platforms is very, very different. Now, what I'm trying to tell them is, how you can leverage. Again, see, one of the statistics, in LinkedIn, there are 1 billion members globally. More than 1 billion members are registered on LinkedIn globally. Only 1.5% of them are using LinkedIn to brand themselves, right? So that means to say the scope is so high. Now, I'm trying to tell them, you can be part of that 1.5%, right? What can we do? How do you post? How do you use this information as to identify the market, to talk about yourself, how you can be a thought leader, right? I think this is what we are trying to do. And yeah, this is what my advice is. When we talk about job market, let's try to think about job market, right? So when a job is posted, you can see it on Naukri, or you can see it on the career website of an organization, or you can see it on LinkedIn. Trust me, only 20% of the jobs are posted online and people get to know about it. The 80% of the job market is a hidden job market. And when we think about this 80% of the hidden job market, this happens through networking. LinkedIn is one of the best tools where you can network with people. LinkedIn is one of the best tools where you can seek job opportunities. I have changed 5 jobs in my career. 4 of them have got through LinkedIn. No, 4 of them have got through networking. LinkedIn was not, very much active in the beginning, nor was I. But after LinkedIn has come in, I think, 4 of my jobs have come through networking. So I think LinkedIn is one of the best tool to network. Very underrated because people are not aware. And also, your patience like you have for Instagram is not the same for LinkedIn.
Finally, what do you look forward to in this corporate mentorship program?
What I look forward to? Well, the least I'm hoping is, these students whom I'm mentoring, they understand and, look career as not something you want to get a job and you're done with it. I think that's where the real challenge begins, right? You feel that, you have got a job and okay, now life is set. No, the real challenge begins there. And I'm trying to set them for there. Getting a job shouldn't be a problem. If you want to have problems, have some real and big problem. Not getting a job is a problem. You can solve you can solve the problem of getting a job by having a good brand presence, which you're already working on. But I want them to be in such a way that people come hunting you to seek your services and not the other way around.
Right. That's wonderful. Wonderfully said, sir. So thank you so much for this wonderful conversation.